So while I'm waiting here, and I know this is recording, looks like the audio is good. Today I'm just going to be going over the fretboard some more, going over scales, how we arrive at scales, how we stay in the key of C. And I always recommend staying in the key of C until we recognize the patterns of how the scales relate to each other. That way, when you want to switch to another key and you're trying to solo, you'll be able to map the fretboard in any key that you need to be in, and you'll quickly be able to identify what that key is as well. So anyway, welcome in. My name is Dan. Welcome to Meesh Guitar. I'm going to try to be doing these lessons daily, live lessons daily with Meesh, and also some live music thrown in there as well, either following the lessons or separately in a separate session, because I do love creating, making, recording, looping, writing, composing original music. That is my other passion next to guitar. I use the guitar to write music, but I also love techniques on guitar. I love improving my skills on guitar, pushing myself to the next level on guitar. So right now I'm just going to kind of walk and talk as I move here. What's up, Sam? Good morning. I'm just mapping out the fretboard in the easiest way possible in the key of C. If any of you out there are interested. Hey, Soft Groundings, welcome in. Doing a little morning guitar lesson here. And just mapping out the fretboard a little bit. And once I get some of these highlighted, this will start to make a bit more sense. If anyone has any questions at any time, feel free to drop a question in the chat. If I miss it, I will try to catch up to it at some point. RJ, welcome in. Okay, so I've just mapped one of the first positions out of the 7 that exist within the major scale, and I'm leaving all but one note out in these patterns, just so you can see how things repeat on the fretboard. They repeat in these nice little blocks. What's up, Jay? And once you identify these blocks, mapping the fretboard becomes pretty easy. It's a matter of just shapes. This is also why people sound like they're playing in shapes. It sounds very robotic sometimes. And let me know how the audio is out there. I've got a little ambient sound going on in the background here. If it's too much or distracting, I can certainly shut that off. Probably would make more sense to have like an ambient guitar track on in the background, I suppose. But this is what we're working on. What's up, Michael, Zuzu, Jay, Joy? Welcome in. Just doing a quick lesson on the fretboard and the ways that I would go about mapping it out to memorize it in the beginning. And I always recommend learning the fretboard in the key of C in the beginning, which means we ignore the sharps and flats and we only play the natural notes that are not sharp or flat. And as long as we know our alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and we know that between the notes E and F and B and C, there's a half step instead of a whole step, then we can start to map out the notes we should be playing in the key of C. Some people refer to these patterns as the modes. And all the modes is when you start and end a note in the major scale. I should turn this down a little bit. Make that a little bit more ambient. So all the modes is when you start the major scale in any particular note. For example, the key of C, the major scale would start on C, and we would call that the Ionian mode. However, if we start that scale on D, and we're still playing the same notes, and we go from D to D playing the natural notes, now all of a sudden we're playing the Dorian mode. And the Dorian mode is, again, the same notes that are in the key of C. It just means you're starting and ending on a different note. So if this is the Dorian mode, we might as well continue mapping it out. In this early stage, it's really not important to know the names. The key of C would be the first degree. The C note would be the first degree, the D would be the second degree, the E would be the third degree, all the way up through 7. So there's 7 modes, and each one represents one of the notes in the major scale. And I know early on when I learned this, it seemed confusing, but it's really, really not confusing once you realize I kind of describe it as you're walking into a building, and these scales are, the modes are basically the building laid out in the same way each time, except you're starting in a different room of the house and you're walking in the same path through the rooms. So if we continue mapping this Dorian, we start on D, and really all we're doing at this point is identifying the patterns that exist where they repeat. So we start D, E, F, G, A, B, and then we see it repeats again right here. G, E, F, G, A, B, D, E, F, G, A, B. Welcome in, Mr. Walter, User, Debbie, Alfred, Tyler. Good to see you guys. And now I'm just going to do maybe one more of these so we can start to get a feel for how easy it is to sort of start to map out the fretboard. I'm going to start now on an A, and I'm doing 3 notes per string. And that's it for now. Now I want to see where that pattern repeats. The pattern's always going to repeat a whole step up from where it started, at least for the next set. So we have A, B, C, D, E, F. And again, this pattern is going to repeat again right here. A, B, C, D, E, F. So we've got these nice little boxes that start to occur. And we could fill in some of these other scales up here. For example, we didn't do the G, that would have been the Lydian. So if we go an octave up, or the Mixolydian, sorry. If you go an octave up, we could fill in the G within the C major scale, which would be a Mixolydian. I will pick orange for the Mixolydian. So that's just going to go G, A, B, C, D, E, G, A, B, C, D, E, G, A. And we're going to run out of notes because you guys can't see that far up. But this should start to sort of give you an idea that the notes flow from high to low, from left to right. You'll start to see clearly if you follow any one of these notes, you can start to pick out the path it takes. So for example, if I pick another color here, we identify E's here. It's a whole step up here, and it's a whole step and a half up here. And that's true for all of the notes. They're going to follow this path up. And obviously the other E is going to be mirrored on the high E string. So that one we already know how to identify. But you'll start to see all the notes sort of just flow in this left to right diagonal path. And so once we start to identify that, we really only need to memorize the patterns that occur on these first 2 strings. And we can kind of just ignore the rest of the fretboard. Because once we learn the patterns here, they're just going to repeat up here. They're going to keep repeating themselves. So let me just undo that ugliness so we don't have to look at it all. And go back to this here. Now, as you can see, these little groupings only contain 6 notes. And obviously there are 7 notes in every scale within the major scale structure. So every mode has 7 notes. So we're missing one to complete this. And so if we were to play this practically, we would want to slide our pinky up to the next connecting note. And then we would be in position to repeat the pattern. So since we've already learned this pattern, we know it's just going to repeat 2 more times. If you think of these strings as groupings, we're dividing up the guitar into 3 groupings of strings with 2 sets each. Or I should say 1 pair each. So each grouping has 2 strings, and these patterns just keep repeating themselves on these 2 sets of strings. The only difference is because the B string is tuned a half step differently than the rest of the strings. To find your octave, you're going to have to go up a step and a half, or a full step and a half, versus a whole step on the first set. So looking at this, you can quickly map out, even without knowing the names, even though this would be the Phrygian mode, starting on E. Starting on A would be Aeolian, starting on D would be Dorian, starting on G would be Mixolydian. Every note you start on in the key of C has its own separate name, named for locations in ancient Greece. And you don't really need to know any of that. All that matters is that you learn these shapes. And so what we're going to do now is I'm going to just connect the scales here to this last note that would make it a full scale. So now what have we done? We've actually played through 1 octave of the scale on just the first 2 strings. Bimboism, good morning. Welcome in. So once you can play the full scale, all 7 notes, just on the first 2 strings, all of a sudden you can repeat that scale 3 times very quickly. And what happens is you end up mapping out a lot of the fretboard in a short amount of time. So if you just learn that first position, E, F, G, A, B, C, slide up to D, you see this little half rectangle, half trapezoid shape here. That is the full first mode in that position in the key of C. So all we have to do is it repeats itself right here. The pattern's going to be the exact same. E, F, G, A, B, C. That connecting note brings it up to D, which in the real practical sense, we would just be sliding. Let me make sure my hand is in view here. But we would just be sliding to the first note. So if we're playing E, F, G, A, B, C, D, we'd slide up to that D. Now we can play the pattern again. E, F, G, A, B, C, slide up to that D. A, B, C, E, F, G, slide up to that D. And now if you look, with just 1 scale, we've gone from the low E almost up to the octave. We're just 1 step away. If we slide up 1 more whole step, we're now at the octave on the high E string. So we've now just covered 3 octaves by learning one shape, 1 position. So basically what that means, if you learn just this 1 scale and you learn it to play 7 notes on the first 2 strings, and then you just copy that pattern 2 more times, you've mapped essentially the whole fretboard. Now of course you're going to be missing the notes down here and the ones that are here, because as you can see on this diagram, as we move up the scale, we kind of paint in this diagonal shape here. So we would have this D, right? And then we would slide up to the D up here as well. So it creates these kind of little shapes. And that keeps repeating itself. Now if we go back and we grab this color, this would be the A minor scale or the Aeolian mode. And to connect that, we've got A, B, C, D, E, F, slide our pinky up to G, and now we've just played the whole mode on 2 strings. So now we can just repeat that pattern, since the shapes just keep repeating on the fretboard. Once you learn the first 2 strings, you'll just see the patterns keep repeating. And that's why it's not that hard to memorize the fretboard once you recognize this. It obviously helps that the high E repeats itself. Welcome in, everybody. Pardon if I don't greet you right away. I am a little distracted looking at the diagram over here. But Bimboism, thank you for the likes. Journey, Brad, Kim, is that Marty? Welcome in, guys. Just doing a little lesson here on the fretboard. The quickest way, in my opinion, to map it, we're talking about the key of C only. So that means you would ignore all of these sharps in here. So we'd only be playing the natural notes. And as we know, E and F and B and C have a half step. Every other note should have a whole step between them. And so given that knowledge, we can quickly start to map out the fretboard no matter where we start. So moving on here in this A minor position, grab the highlighter. So again, A minor would be played, just to demonstrate it up here, see if you guys get this in the camera. I'd be starting on the fifth, so we have A, B, C, D, E, F. Then we'd slide up to the G here. Now we've just played the entire Aeolian mode on the first two strings. So now all we have to do is repeat that same pattern. Repeats on the seventh of the D string. A, B, C, D, E, F. Slide up to G again, and now we're in the position to play it again on the B string. It repeats itself again. We slide up again, and again, we're just a whole step away from going all the way to the next octave up. So we've gone through 1, 2, 3 octaves, and again mapped most of the fretboard just by learning a couple positions. So this is the power of these shapes, because once you unlock just this part of the fretboard, these first two strings here, then you can just copy and paste that knowledge to the rest of the fretboard, and these patterns will just keep repeating. So let me undo that so we don't have to look at all of that color. So again, let's continue the A minor scale here. We're going to connect the end of this grouping of 6 to the G, which is going to finish off the scale in this position. You'll see the shape again. Now we're going to repeat the scale A, B, C, D, E, F, slide up to G. And again, if we want to officially complete the scale, we could slide that up to the final A right there. So again, we can do this for every single note. The only reason I'm not is it gets very messy to start overlapping with the highlighter on this diagram. So I'm trying to space these out. If anyone's curious or already has the knowledge, this first scale here starting on E in the key of C would be the Phrygian mode. This A scale, A minor scale, is the relative minor in the key of C. This would be the Aeolian mode. The D scale in the key of C is the Dorian mode in the second degree. And then I'm also highlighting here, starting on G, the Mixolydian, which is the 5th degree of the scale. So let's continue on just to illustrate. I know those of you on TikTok can't see the full fretboard. It's going off the screen here. I tried to compromise as best I could to get most of it on the screen there for you, and also try not to shrink down too small. It's tough. If you guys do want the full screen experience, you can head over to YouTube, where I'm also streaming full screen. So let's go ahead and move on to the Dorian mode. The Dorian mode starts on D, and again we're in the key of C, so we're only playing the natural notes, which means no sharps and no flats. This diagram only shows the flats anyway, but every sharp can also be called a flat. Typically we call them sharps if we're going up, and we call them flats if we're going down. So let's continue on here with this D Dorian. I'll grab the green color again. And we go D, E, F, G, A, B, and then we would slide up to the C. And I see now that I actually didn't even complete this one quite all the way, did I? We want to go up to that B. So Dorian would look like this. We'd have G, or sorry, Dorian would be D, E, F, G, A, B, slide up to C. And then we can repeat ourselves again. D, E, F, A, B, C, slide up. Then we repeat ourselves again. And again, this quickly maps out the entire fretboard for us if we take this approach. We play, if you already know the mode's 3 notes per string, which a lot of people learn them 3 notes per string, and all you have to do is slide up that last note, and then that pattern just repeats itself again. And this is great for doing legato runs or very speedy runs, and covering a lot of real estate on the fretboard all at once. Thank you for the likes over there, Claudia Maria, and thank you for the heart me and the wink. Appreciate it. Good morning. If anyone has any questions out there, any guitar related questions or any other questions for me, feel free to ask them. Oh, sorry, over here. I'm Benny Builds. I see you over there. Sorry, I didn't see that sooner. I am not on Twitch right now. I'm currently only streaming on TikTok and YouTube. I hope to be streaming out to Instagram as well soon. I have not hit the mythical number. I've been stalled. If anyone's on Instagram, go give me a follow on Instagram, because I've been stalled at 980 followers for a long time, and basically it's the same content I post here, so I don't know. That one's a tough nut to crack, I guess, but my plan is to post or live stream there as well. Those will probably be the 3 main platforms I'll be streaming to, and but yeah, I could add Twitch, I suppose. I just I've never been on Twitch. I know it's more heavily gaming focused, but maybe I'll check it out if you're saying there's more of a musician following on Twitch. It's easy enough to just add another stream key to OBS and just blast out everywhere I can. So I will definitely expand my reach as it makes sense. It's also tough with this monitor layout. I have an ultra wide that's 4 feet wide, so I have to look way over here to look at YouTube. I have to look over here to see TikTok, and then I have to look over here to do my diagram. So if I see any comments sneak in over there, I may miss them, but I do appreciate all your comments. And thank you for the roses. I very much appreciate that, Claudia. Thank you very much. Okay, let's continue mapping out this Dorian mode on the diagram here. We're mostly done. But if we just go ahead and connect these notes just to, again, reinforce this shape that we can create. Oops, that was odd. Didn't mean for that to happen. Apparently if you hold that down, it'll snap. All right. Okay, so there you can see Dorian starts on D, and it goes all the way up to C. So we would slide up to that C, puts us in the next position to play the next shape. And in this example, we're all the way up to the 15th fret, but this 15th fret also represents the 3rd fret. It would be the same. Yes, it is absolutely possible to play guitar with one hand. It's possible to play guitar with no hands. There's a guy out there who plays with his feet. Actually, he has no arms, and he's incredible. He literally frets notes with his toes, and he plucks with his other foot. It's absolutely amazing. So yeah, I don't think there are any limitations but the ones we put on ourselves. I think there are solutions and ways around doing pretty much anything you could possibly want to do. So yeah, if you want to look for inspiration You can check out that guy. I don't know if you guys have seen, there's also a wrestler out there who has no legs, and he's incredible. He's a man with very strong upper body, and that's all he has. There's nothing below his torso, and he's a wrestler, like legitimate wrestler. So yeah, I don't think there are limitations like that. Especially with technology now, there are people, and any guitar players listening out there, if they follow Jason Becker's story. Jason Becker was one of my biggest influences early on. He's an incredible virtuoso guitar player. Was popular in the 80s. He played in a band called Cacophony, and he had ALS, and basically is in a wheelchair. He can't really move at all, except just very little with like a he can move his tongue. Like, he was able to manipulate, basically looking with his eyes and technology, write a whole album that's incredible, called Perspective. And so yeah, even now with technology, you can be very physically limited and still create amazing things. So yeah, we live in an amazing time right now. Thank you very much for the snail, the slow motion. I appreciate that. I'm getting on a little rant here, getting away from my guitar teaching, but that's okay. I think that message is important, and I think that was an incredible question to ask, because I think people think, well, I have a disability, or I can't move my hand well, or I'm missing a hand, or I actually watched a video the other day of a woman who plays violin without an arm. Now, again, disclaimer, AI has gotten very convincing. It's very possible I was duped by AI, but this looked pretty convincing. And I have seen other feats like that, where people figure out ways around their limitations and end up creating amazing art. So let's continue on here, and thank you very much for that question, Claudia. That was amazing. Okay, the G scale in the key of C, the mode would be called the Mixolydian mode. I'm going to finish highlighting that one in orange here, just to finish my point. I think what I'll do, actually, since I think my TikTok crowd can't see it all, I'm going to shift this over for you until you can see the whole scale. There we go. Hopefully you guys can now see the orange scale that I'm highlighting for you guys. So let me get back over here. So the Mixolydian would go G, A, B, C, D, E. And what I love about the Mixolydian scale, I think it is one of the most powerful modes to learn, is it's 3 notes, 1 whole step apart on the 2 strings, and that pattern just repeats itself. Let me hold my guitar up actually so you guys can see what I'm doing. So the Mixolydian mode, I know it says 15 there, but again, that's 12 frets up from the 3rd fret, so we could play the Mixolydian mode on the 3rd fret as well. And it's going to look like this. Now, as you can see, if I just slide up from that last note, the 7th note here, I've then completed the Mixolydian mode. So I just went G, A, B, C, D, E, to the F. And I know I just played an F sharp by accident before, so yes, it should stop on the F. So it would be G, A, B, C, D, E, F. So that's the entire Mixolydian mode there. So now we can just repeat that pattern, because it repeats an octave up here. And as we slide up into that position, it literally puts our finger right where it needs to be to continue playing that pattern again. Slide it up. Slide up, and then we're at the 3rd octave again. So what's nice about learning the strings like this, breaking them up into groupings of 2, I like to call it string sequencing, because you just learn one shape and then that applies to all of the octaves. So you can very quickly map out the fretboard once you learn these patterns. And it may be easier visually to do this on a fretboard diagram in the key of C that doesn't show you the sharps or flats. It only will have the whole natural notes in here, the E, F, G, A, B, C. But again, these shapes will emerge once you start mapping out the fretboard that same way. So you'll see this shape again, flat on one side, angled up to the other side. And my fretboard diagram runs out on the top here, so I can't finish the scale there. But if we went down to the 3rd fret, this would be the same thing. I could technically draw that same scale here, G, A, B, C, D, E, up to the F. And obviously it's getting very hard to read with all the color on top of it. But just to illustrate that it's pretty easy to map out the fretboard once you start to recognize that after the 2nd string, every pattern just repeats itself again. So again, this next part, I will take something, I don't know what color would be best for this, that would stand out. Maybe this blue color would be good, just to illustrate the path. So you see our E's go up, E, E, E. Everything follows this path, G, G, G. And obviously, we know the G, we know the high E string repeats itself. So if we know this E, we know it's here as well. So we kind of can ignore this top string. So we already know how to find all of the octaves, all the notes. And this applies to the 2nd string as well. If you go here, you'll see, you'll get B, 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 B. It's always going to follow this pattern no matter where you start. If you go up and to the right, the octaves repeat. E, E, E. You know, you can start anywhere. D, D, D. So once you start to see how the fretboard flows from left to right, and that everything repeats itself every 8 notes, and you can play each mode and scale on two strings, then it becomes very easy to memorize the whole fretboard. And once you have that memorized, it's then a lot easier to start improvising guitar music over that. So that being said, I don't know if we have any questions out there. Claudia, thank you so much for your support today. I hope you're doing well in Romania. And let me know if you have any questions. I know I don't think you play guitar yet, but if you have any questions, let me know. I know hopefully seeing these diagrams like this isn't too overwhelming. And I've been working on how to teach this concept as clearly as possible, because I think it is by far the easiest way to decode the fretboard. That being said, I think I may go ahead and play a little bit of music here. Since we don't have too many people in here, I don't see any questions in the chats. And so I think what I'll do is I will shift over to a little music portion of the live session here. I'm trying to go live daily. And so this is part of that daily live. I think the format will probably consist of me teaching and probably following up with a demonstration of what I've taught. And what this lesson should be able to teach you is basically how to improvise, how to map out the fretboard, which will allow you to play in any key once you recognize these shapes and patterns. because basically once you've got this mapped out, you can just shift this up or down the fretboard, this whole entire shape and how they're all interrelated. You shift it up or down the fretboard depending on what key you're in. Unipiece, welcome in. What's up, Seven? So feel free to ask any questions. I think I'm going to play a little bit of music for my own enjoyment here, and I'll probably wrap this up in about 10 minutes. And if anyone is interested or curious, I do offer lessons online. Check out my website, meeshproductions.com/lessons. And for a free PDF Introduction to Guitar ebook, you can download that at meeshproductions.com/PDF. And with that, I'm going to play a little bit of music. Go ahead and get this window out of our way for here. And I'll keep this here though, why not? A little morning guitar with Meesh. We'll keep that little sign up there. All right, let's do this. Let's get a little loop going. A C-sharp minor loop, and this is what I'm talking about. If you learn those patterns, it doesn't matter what key you're in. A lot of people would not choose, or a lot of guitar players would not choose to improvise in C-sharp minor, which is the key of E, opposed to some of the easier keys. But in guitar, it's all the same. It really is. The patterns just keep repeating. Once you know the patterns, it doesn't matter. No key is harder than any other key. Whereas on piano, that is not the case. The key of C is easy, every other key gets harder. So guitar is easy. It's front-loaded though. The difficulty is front-loaded on guitar, whereas once you learn those patterns, you can then take it to every other key. So it's like, the learning curve is steep at the beginning, but it flattens out quickly. Or at least that's what I like to tell my students. Let's do it. What's up, Mari? Thank you. Thank you, Witchy. Welcome in. Well, that is part of the guitar experience, unfortunately, is you get calluses on your fingers. The good news is if you play consistently for a couple weeks, you'll build up those calluses and your skin will get tougher on your fingertips. Mine is at this point very resilient, but that builds up very quickly. If I take a week off, which is very rare for me to take a week off from guitar, but even after a week, my fingertips will start getting more sensitive again. So it is something that just builds up and you maintain from frequent playing, which is difficult in the beginning, right? Because you don't have a lot to play and your fingers get sore, so you want to take time off to let them feel better. But if you do that, you'll never get to the point where they're tough and they feel resilient. So my recommendation would just be to slowly build it up. The key is consistency daily. So it's important to pick up the guitar every day, even if it's just for a few minutes, just to get your fingers pushed down, and it will help build that up more quickly. You're very welcome. Heartbeat, Witchy. I have been in many bands back in the day, but I haven't played out with a band for probably 10 years or more, sadly. Thank you for the bear, Claudia. Thank you for the high bear. Appreciate all the support this morning. Thank you guys very much for all the support and the gifts and the likes and the hearts and the roses and the bears and the snails and the donut. I did miss one. The donut. Thank you, Maria, Claudia Maria. Just reading through the stuff I missed. I think I missed. I think I got everything. But thank you very much, guys, for the support. I appreciate it, and I will be back on tomorrow because that is the plan. Is my beautiful Dawn has advised me to go every single day, and that's what I'm trying to do. So thank you again, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Yes, thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Take care. Bye.